what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin on episode 84. And I always have to look it up because I'm afraid that I'm going to get it wrong.
Me too.
Because you kind of lose track. They all start to string together. But 84, getting closer and closer, man, to 100. Yeah. I know we've been saying that recently because, like, there's always, like, those milestones. Like episode 25, episode 50, episode 52, because it was a year, and then 75, and up, and away we go.
I can't believe 100 is, like, right around the corner.
You know what's funny is I had someone who started, and I think I might have mentioned this last episode. I can't even remember. But I had someone who recently started listening to the podcast from my gym, and he's like, well, I didn't know you had your own podcast. And he listened to it, and he was like, dude, that's crazy. He's like, 80-some episodes? And I said, yeah. And then the next day, he was like, do you post one every single week, every Saturday? I said, every Saturday, man. Like, it was like he was impressed at the sheer volume of episodes we released, and then on top of that, he was even more impressed that it was like put out every single week.
Right.
And so he has been, I don't know what number he's on now or if he's even continuing it, but after a week, he came back in, or a couple days even, it was less than a week, he came back in and said, I'm already on episode 8 or whatever. So he was like going back from the beginning and kind of listening to them all, which I have not really done. Yeah. You know, I haven't listened to many of the old episodes.
I listened to I think I listened to like the first 20.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was tough. It was hard. Like, we would, so busy. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
But I always suggest everybody that asks me about it I'd always suggest that they listen to them all, because we talk about so much that kind of goes together.
Yeah.
But it's because they always say, well, what's your favorite? And I'm like, I don't know.
The ones that are just us, like, I never listen to.
No.
Like, I never go back and rerun it by. I mean, it's a conversation that we have anyway, so
yeah, exactly.
I don't want to say it doesn't feel worthwhile, but I already had the conversation.
Exactly.
Like, I know what we talked about. Like, there's no need to go re-listen or anything.
I don't know. Like, that's one of the hardest questions I've ever gotten from a listener was, what my favorite was. Like, what was my favorite episode so far? And I'm like, dude, that's like impossible to answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, especially the ones where we've had guests on, too.
Yeah, because, I mean, difficult. Those, like you said, those are like the only ones that are even like on the list. In my opinion, it would have to be, of our guests, it would have to be one of them.
Yeah.
And to pick one would be tough.
Yeah. I feel like we do the others a disservice if we pick
and exactly.
And it's not that we don't want to hurt their feelings. It's just that all had pretty valuable messages and stuff. Right. I don't know if it could narrow it down to like one particular person.
Right. Maybe I could probably highlight like a topic from our group of guests that really hit home for me. But I don't think I could pick like a particular episode that I say you have to listen. If you're going to listen to one, this is the episode you have to listen to.
Yeah.
I couldn't pick one.
Yeah. But it's definitely some overlap, but all unique in their own sense too.
I think that's like a trend in like the success world, and like when you're talking about success and that's your main theme, there's gonna be overlap because that's how success is bred. It's like people doing the same style things and getting somewhere with it.
Yeah, it's not by chance.
Right.
Like if it was by chance, then
calculated. This
podcast would be pointless because if there's no rhyme or reason into how successful people are becoming as such, then we're looking for answers, or we're chasing the ghost, so to speak.
Exactly.
Like there's nothing there that for us to kind of discover. So you can't think about it like that. Yeah, there's definitely overlap, and that's the point of this. Like when we set out, we said, hey, what do all these successful people have in common? Let's see if we can identify it, because if we can identify it, we can reciprocate it.
Right.
Like we can mimic it. Like if everybody that we know is a millionaire they all have these specific traits, or everybody that we know has a really, really strong following. They all have these particular communication skills, or everybody we know that has a high degree of accomplishment. Like, what do they all have in common? Because if they all have this trait, or these 2 traits, or these 3 things, well, then maybe if you and I kind of mimic that, then there's a possibility that, we'll get there too.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way I look at it.
That's the whole idea. It's not, in the process of doing these episodes in this podcast, it's like we're farming for success information.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the farming is a good way to think about it.
And I think that's, important to be upfront about, like, hey man, like we're not doing this because we are successful. Or it would be the Caught the Dreams podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we are two guys that want to be successful and do the best we possibly can at everything we do. So why wouldn't we try to seek out those people that are?
Yeah. That's all we are as detectives. Success detectives would be a good way to frame it. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it. I mean, I always try to like make sure that when we, you always have to give the disclaimer with this stuff that we don't think that we're higher than we are. I know we do that pretty frequently, but I'm just adamant on the fact of like, I'm not successful yet, which is why we're having this podcast.
Right.
If I was successful, I probably wouldn't have it.
Right.
I'm sure you feel the same way. If you were successful, you wouldn't want to be on this podcast because you wouldn't be searching for anything because you'd have the answers.
Also, I don't know that I'll ever achieve the level of success that I won't be chasing more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
it's what it's comparable to. It's like the gym stuff.
Yeah.
Like the day you start lifting is the day you're never satisfied.
Right.
Because you will never reach the pinnacle of where you want to reach. It's always, you're hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And I think that, there's also, because that could be a bad thing too.
Yeah.
Where, if it's financially based, where there's no such thing as enough money and you're constantly, chasing and chasing and chasing. Or even in a physique realm where you're constantly chasing a better body. It could be to the point where it's healthy and then eventually could lead you down a bad road if it gets to that breaking point where it becomes unhealthy or dangerous or whatever, right?
Right.
I mean, it's entirely possible to go that route, so.
I agree.
So how's training and stuff been, man?
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, you've been back in the old garage.
Yep. Moved the stuff home to the garage. Worked out every 3 days this week, so Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it feels good. It feels real good to be back, kind of not essentially back where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the beginning of my gym time was not here, but this feels like the ground zero.
Yeah, it feels like home. I mean, literally it is. But
home,
then, yeah.
And got some cool stuff in the works for the gym. I just purchased a power rack, kind of like an all-inclusive power rack. It's got cable crossover, pulleys on it.
Are prices coming down for that stuff?
No.
Because I would have assumed that they would have because it was absolutely outrageous during the pandemic, obviously. Like, I was looking into getting like a power rack, a bench, and some weights just to do some basic barbell movements, and it was insane.
I don't know. Maybe they came down. I'm not sure. I really wasn't because I can't remember how much they were, back in the middle of the pandemic. But,
so in your estimation, they're still expensive?
Oh, it's still expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like I was looking at, and every time you thought you would find a good deal, you'd have to read the fine print. Like it would say, like, oh, a squat rack, $600. It's like, oh, that's affordable. I can do that. And then you look at it, and it's literally just a squat stand.
Yeah.
Like there's no safety bars, there's no bench, there's no bar, there's no plates. It's literally just a stand that holds a barbell.
And that's what I have now, essentially, is a squat stand that adjusts up and down. You can bench or you can squat off of it.
Yeah, and that's it.
And like I said, it's rudimentary and it's getting the job done, right? But it's not, I don't know, it's not adequate.
One of the things I told myself was that when this all went back to normal, so to speak, and I went back to the gym, I told myself that I wanted to be better prepared next time and that I would slowly, because like for me, at least now, like I'm not financially in a place where I would feel comfortable forking over $10,000 for a new gym.
Right.
Like I just can't justify that. So like what I want to do is maybe, and I haven't to this point, but I told myself I was going to piece it together.
Yeah.
Like almost like a puzzle, just one piece at a time, like maybe buy a bar. And even if I don't use that bar for a little bit, because I'm still going to the actual gym, just have that in my back pocket. And then maybe a couple months later, buy some bumper plates. And then I can start with just deadlifts at home or whatever. Yeah. And then slowly progress from there where I'm buying it because I don't know, it's just hard to rationalize in my head having that huge upfront cost of buying a squat rack or a power rack, a bench, a bar, and plates. It's outrageous.
Yeah, it is completely outrageous. And just as long as you remember, as long as you live in this town, the gym's closed. this one will always be open. So,
Yeah.
Like, and that's why I did it. Like, I did it mainly for me. You know, like we've talked before. A lot of this stuff we do is selfish. You know, because we have to be. But I thought about it, and I was like, you know, a lot of people like to work out with me, but I physically just am not able to get to the gym right now. Like with the newborn and as busy as I am, it was like the only factor that could go away.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, it can't go away. So I had to just figure out a way to bring it home.
Yeah.
So that's just where we are. And I couldn't really, to be honest, afford it. I just made it work, and it had to happen. So it's going to be cool though. I'm really excited to see how much better it gets training at home.
Yeah.
Once the new rack gets here and everything.
I think it'll be more consistent, number one. Number two, it's just nice to have the freedom of lifting when you want to lift.
Yeah.
And there's, like, truthfully, if you lift for, let's say, an hour, I'll just put it at a nice round figure. Let's say you lift for an hour. When you train at home, you block off the hour.
Right.
When you train at the gym, you block off upwards of 2 because travel time, getting your stuff together, going to the gym, you know, setting up at the gym, possibly waiting for equipment, and then driving home from the gym.
Right.
Like there's a lot of extra time, and then the little things that everybody knows happen, but they don't account for, like saying hello to people that you know, and someone talking to you in between your sets, and it's just, I don't want to say it's a loss of focus, but it's a loss of goal-oriented positioning. Like you're not positioning yourself just for that hour of getting your goal accomplished. You're talking to people and traveling, and you know, so there's just a lot of extra time that gets lost because it doesn't seem like much, but it's an extra 30 seconds here, an extra 30 seconds there, and all of those 30 seconds add up to minutes, and the minutes add up to upwards of an hour.
Right.
So it'll be like a lot more efficient for you just to have that freedom of an hour is an hour.
Right.
45 minutes is 45 minutes. You go downstairs, get your stuff done, and move on with life.
I agree. 100%.
And it's really cool to be able to do it in the summer, too, when it's really hot.
Yeah, because I that's my deal, too, is I open the garage door, and it's hot out, and a lot of times right now I drag out, if I'm deadlifting, I just drag it out in the driveway.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, there's something about being outside and doing gym-style workouts at home. I don't know. I'm like, I'm over the moon about it so far. Like, I do miss the environment at the gym, but I'm slowly creating that here. Like, it's going to take a couple months to get everything put together, but it's coming along.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, like how huge the environment is, and it transcends the gym. It's other places too. Like if I want to get work done, I like putting myself in an environment or in a place like where I'll actually leave the house, go to the school to get work done because I can be at my desk. There's no distractions. Like I will find things to be distracted by when I'm in my house. And it's not because avoidance of work. It's just because like the hierarchy of things that needs done flip-flops so quickly for me. So like I'll sit down to do client emails at my house and look around and say, oh, this room's dirty. I got to get this done first before I get my emails done because the emails are important, but I won't be able to focus if the room's not clean. So I start cleaning the room, then the room's clean, then I have to do laundry. Oh, let me throw these in real quick, and then so like there's so many things of like what takes precedence changes every 30 seconds to where I can't focus. Whereas when I'm at school at my desk, there's no distractions. There's nothing that can take the place of the emails being most important right now. So then I'm kind of forced to do them.
Right.
You know, it's not, and I'm not like that normally. Like sometimes you would look at that and say like it's like an ADD, like a lack of ability to sustain attention. But for me, it's not. It's just like I need to be in the proper environment to get the work done that I need to get done. So like gym, you know,
gym work.
It's gym work. If it's office work, I need to be in the office. If it's reading, it needs to be in the library. Like I don't like trying to. I am not strong enough yet. Not literally, but metaphorically speaking, I am not strong enough yet to create the environment. I have to be in there still.
Right. Well,
so like some people are super mentally strong where they can create their own environment wherever they're at. I feel like I'm better at that point at 31 than I was at 21.
Me too.
But I'm definitely not completely there yet.
And I don't think I am either. And that's why I've really been trying to get the guys, the boys that normally where I work out with, to give it a shot and come over here because that makes the environment that much closer.
Yep.
You know, is having the same spotters and having the same guys yelling at you and doing the same workouts but just in a different location. That's helping me.
Well, one of the things that helps me in that regard is like I've been pretty vocal in the gym about being vocal in the gym.
Yeah.
Like being vocal in the gym about being vocal is me yelling. Like when I yell to other people to get them pumped up, like I get more pumped up yelling than when other people yell at me.
Yeah.
So like when other people are trying to psych you up, like that's good. It raises the energy a little bit, but like I get more energized when I yell myself. Like when I'm yelling, like if someone's doing a tough set and I'm yelling at them, that motivates me more, having that energy output. So that's a way to kind of change the environment. You're not changing the physical environment, but you're changing the atmosphere a little bit by having people to train with. Like if I was to work out specifically or solely in a whole home gym, like in my garage or whatever, I could do it and get a good workout. I would be getting a great workout if I had somebody there with me.
Yeah.
Because the physical environment isn't changing, but the emotional environment is changing because there's a lot more energy that way.
I agree.
So yeah, anytime I have the opportunity, and I've gone complete 180 on that because up until, shortly before I met you probably, up until that point, I only trained alone and I only wanted to train alone. Like I think at the time I met you, I was training with Christian, who was my training partner, and he had just started training with me recently. And to the best of my knowledge, that was really the first time that I had trained with someone consistently. So like I had some training partners in college. I actually had a really big group in college. We had a bunch of kids like, Tyler and John and Ryan and Jack and Jimmy and another Ryan. And I had like this huge group of kids that went to the gym together at the same time. But not always did we lift together, so to speak. So I always liked lifting alone, especially when I entered adulthood. I just put my headphones on, wouldn't talk to anybody, and I love lifting alone. Whereas now I don't use headphones, and I really, really like lifting with other people as opposed to just myself.
I agree. And so I never did get into the by myself. Now, I like to run by myself, and that's my alone time. But
when you started off, like I feel like you needed people there to help.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, because like that's why when you started at the gym, like I felt like I was one of the first persons that like actually talked to you, or the first person to talk to you, and then kind of showed you the ropes. And in essence, your time in the gym, that's all you had ever known was doing something with me because we're explaining, or my group or our group now, like where it's just like, oh, you come with the boys because that's who was there when you first started. Like,
exactly.
You never had, I don't think you ever, realistically, you never had the opportunity to work alone.
No, and I think I've definitely benefited from that though. From jumping right into the gym, and I went into that that environment expecting to be by myself because I used to be a really big social butterfly, but then at one point I kind of flipped where I would try not to talk to people. And I didn't have that opportunity when I started at the gym with you guys because it was like maybe 3 days. Maybe. Yeah, I think it was like maybe 3 days, and I got to a part on the workout that I bought from the guy that owns the gym, and I didn't know what it meant.
Because I saw you a couple of days prior, not that I was ignoring you or purpose, but like never crossed paths to the point where like dialogue ignited, but like I'd see you, and then I remember we were in the turf room, which is like this big room full of turf where, I do a lot of my athletic training clients, and I remember you would ask me a question, said, hey, can I ask you a question? What's this mean? And I can't even, it was something with the TRX bands.
Squats,
and I remember going over it with you, and then that's just the next day we talked again, and then the next day, and then it was just, that's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah, but you definitely, I go through like these ebbs and flows of being sociable. Like, I feel like I'm kind of an enigma. It's weird where I feel like I'm an extremely social person as far as social intelligence. So I'm not saying like I'm the most brilliant guy in the world, but there's part of like communication that can be labeled intelligence. Like, how do you communicate with people? Like, can you form relationships with people? Can you, I don't know. There's just some people that you are easy to have a conversation with, and some people that are weird. Like,
Right.
and it's difficult.
Yeah,
you know?
and there's nothing wrong with them. Like, there's just some people that are backward and don't like to talk.
Yeah. And I have these kind of ebbs and flows of emotions where, even though I can be very sociable, there's like periods of times where I don't want to be.
Right.
And it's not out of anger or spite for other people. It's just like sometimes I just like being introverted. And it's funny because if you would ask people, like I talked about before on the podcast, if you ask people what I'm like, it depends on what group, and you would get answers that are totally different. And I don't consider myself a chameleon or someone who changes, but like if you ask the people at the gym, what's Charlie like? Or you ask, my athletes what I was like, or you ask my students what I was like, there's obviously going to be consistency there, but like, again, based on the environment,
right.
I feel like you can wear the different hats. Like I can turn on the crazy hat when I need to turn on the crazy, or put on the crazy hat, but I could also put on the professionalism hat when I need to, or whatever.
Yeah. That kind of brings back to a moment from one of our interviews with Mr. Williams, being a star in your role.
Yeah.
Like you're able to identify what your role is in that scenario, and you're just good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like sometimes, in a social group, I'm the funny one. In another social group, I may be the one that has to like lead the charge, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah. I think that you adapt to who you're around, where you're at, and that kind of changes what your role is. Like, because I feel like that's probably a good sign of a well-rounded individual, because you can always be, if you like, let's say humor is one of your things, and you're always the funny guy. That's awesome, but there's times where you're not going to fit in a particular social situation because a funny guy's not needed.
Right.
We don't need anybody to be the funny guy in this situation.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're well-rounded, you can adapt. And then the big thing from that about being well-rounded and adaptive is the fact that like, I feel like that allows me to have some diversity in terms of who I can hang out with.
Right.
Like one thing that I prided myself on that I still kind of look back and reflect and do is that when I was in high school, I felt like for the most part, I got along with every single group of people. Like I went to a pretty big high school. I guess big is subjective, but several hundred kids per grade, which for this area is pretty big. We were playing schools in our conference that had 800 kids a grade, 900 kids a grade, like graduating class. So like we were playing big schools, and I went to a big school. So there's like you can make friends pretty easily at my school, at my old high school, because there were so many people there that there's always going to be, you're going to have your jocks, your nerds, your whatevers. And I felt like, I don't know why, but I was just pretty inclined to getting along well with people.
Yeah, I've never not gotten along with any particular group.
Yeah.
Like I've always been able to, fit into that environment.
Yeah, and you're always hesitant with that stuff because you don't want to say like change. Because I don't ever want to come across as disingenuous or like fake. Like, oh, Charlie, he acts this way around these people or this way around those people. It's like,
know your audience.
And then there's convictions that are going to lay the same no matter what paradigm I'm in. I could act funny around this group and act like a clown, but my morals, my ethics, what motivates me, that all stays the same, regardless of where I'm at.
I agree.
So one thing that we have to get to, I posted and you posted some Q&A stuff. I didn't have the intention of this being like a full Q&A episode, but just thought maybe we could give the listeners an opportunity to be engaging, because that's one thing, full disclosure, I think that's one thing that you and I have failed with, that we said we were going to do, and we really didn't. For no other reason other than just didn't do it, is we wanted to try to make this more engaging. And I felt, to this point, we really haven't done that. So like we both posted some Q&A stuff, just if anybody had some random questions. And we got a really, really good question that we're going to read. And we got several questions, but one really good one that's going to kind of monopolize our whole time for the second half of the show. So let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll read that question when we come back.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we are back from our commercial break. All right, man. So prior to the break, we were talking about how we kind of put out some feelers for some Q&As, and got a really good question, a little bit philosophical in a sense, but I figured that we would read it, and I tried to not think about it, but it's kind of like difficult when you're trying to not think of something that you're already thinking about.
Right.
Like I could tell you, hey, don't think about red balloons, and then automatically all you're going to start thinking about is red balloons. Like you can't not think about something. So then what happened after I read this question and tried to not think about it is I did try to think about it. And man, was it difficult. So you're hearing this for the first time because It was one of the questions that was posed on my feed. So the question is from, this was on Instagram. It's at _Donnie.9. So _DONNY.9. And this is Donovan, who is a former player of mine, one of my favorite players that I've ever coached in football. And he posted a question that says, what harsh truths do you prefer to ignore? So what are some kind of harsh truths or harsh realities that you know exist that you choose to ignore? And I thought about this for a while. I thought, man, that's like really loaded. That's very difficult to answer. And I was able to think of one thing. So I'm going to kind of let you ruminate on this for a minute and let you think about it, because it's loaded and there's a lot that you can kind of uncork here. For me, I choose to ignore it in some instances, but I'm getting better at realizing that it's there. Is the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And part of that stems from coaching, teaching, and all of it stems from coaching, teaching, and training for me. So essentially what that means is you can give somebody all the resources to be successful. You can give them the knowledge and the empowerment to be successful, but you can't make them do the work. So like I could write the perfect plan for someone, but if they're not going to do the work, they're not going to get any better. That falls on them. Mm-hmm. Hence, you can lead the horse to water. You can show the horse the water, but you can't force the horse to drink. The horse has to drink on its own will. And that's, I'm sure that everyone would agree that that's a true statement. The reason that I tried to ignore that is because I just feel like highly, highly convicted to exhaust every ounce of energy I have to people that are hesitant to drink.
Right.
Like, I'm going to grab the horse's head and hold him, stick it underwater until he drowns.
Yeah.
If he's not taking a drink, just because of, wanting success for other people. So like I used to tell my football players when I coached all the time, I would say, I can't want this more than you want this. Like if you have a head coach or an assistant coach or a strength coach or whatever that wants to win more than you want to win, or a coach that wants you to be successful more than you want your own success, that's a problem.
Yeah, big problem.
And I've always had a very, very difficult time recognizing that. I would always, the one story that I've told several times on air, and it's worth repeating because it resonates pretty deeply with me, and it always has. When I would go on my student teaching placements, I tried to be pretty active, and I would always ask questions, and I wanted to learn. And if I'm going to be out in the classroom teaching when I'm in college, I want to try to get as prepared as I can for when I'm out of college and I'm teaching for real. Right. There's no sense in just going through the motions. Let me use this as an opportunity to get better. So I would ask my cooperating teachers that I worked under all kinds of questions. And one of the questions that I asked everybody, because I thought that it was pretty important, was, What's something that took you years to know or years to learn through teaching that you wish you would have started off knowing? Like what's something, like think about all the things in like performance and fat loss and weight training and stuff that you wish you knew starting off. Like where we'd be now if we do this stuff 10, 15, 20 years ago or whatever. So one of the greatest answers, if not the greatest answer I got, was a lady. Her name was Linda Hogan. And she told me that one of the things you have to come to grips with is that you can't save the world. She said, alluding to the horse in the water, just saying that there's kids that you will do everything you can to want them to be successful and to help them. But there's some kids that just will not buy in. They will not trust you. There's just something about them, whether it's trauma related or environmental, that they're growing up and going home to atrocities that you've never even imagined before. So they could have emotional scarring from that, so they're not going to buy into you. Or in regards to that, you can't help that either.
Right.
Like they have problems that you can't fix. 8 hours of school isn't enough in a day to help fix what's going on at home for some of those kids. So that was something that I knew early on, but I chose to ignore it. That's a harsh reality or a harsh, truth that I chose to ignore because I'm like, no, I can save every kid. I can get to every kid. I can connect with them. And there's some that you just will not be able to form a connection with. And you could get overly philosophical with it too, depending on, what your religious or spiritual convictions are. Maybe it's just bad energy matches, or there's just something in the universe that people don't gel well together. Or I know people who believe in horoscopes. Like there's just, and that's okay. Like I have to continue to tell myself it's okay to let horses not drink the water. But that was the one thing that I was able to think about as far as a harsh reality that I choose to ignore, because I'm like, no, I'm going to ignore the fact that you can't help everyone, and I'm going to prove that you can help everyone. And then as I've gotten older, I've slowly started to ignore that because it saved me time and mental anguish.
Right.
Because you would lose sleep over those things.
Right. So I guess mine, and can you read the question again? Make sure I structure the answer.
Yep, let me bring it up one more time.
Appropriately.
What harsh truths do you prefer to ignore?
So like you, I have one that I have ignored for 15, 20 years. And in the recent few years, I've decided I'm learning to acknowledge it. And it's hard because it's still hard today even. So like my weight, my biggest at the pinnacle of my weight gain, I was, 526 pounds. And it was very hard to accept that that was my fault.
Yeah.
It was really hard to understand that I did something wrong, because I've always tried to be a really good person. Like, and then how does something so bad happen to somebody that tries to be good?
And am I wrong in thinking that you being a good person, which you are, but you could use that as self-justification for shortcomings elsewhere?
Yes.
Like,
that's what I did.
I'm lazy, but I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
So I can get away with it.
Right.
Or, I don't have the greatest job in the world, but I'm a nice guy. Because I'm sure there's people out there saying stuff like this. Or, not necessarily just with being a good person, like, oh, well, just take bodybuilding. Like, yeah, my health is terrible and my blood work is skewed and I'm probably going to die of a heart attack in a couple years, but I look good. So, okay.
Right.
So, like, sometimes when you're good at something, you can use it to justify not being good at other things, I think that's pretty common. So like, you being a nice guy is almost like, well, I'm a nice guy, so nothing else matters because I'm trying to be good. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to accept it. And I honestly didn't start accepting it until recently, that all of the stuff that I've missed out on and all the things that I haven't been able to do in my early adult life, that the stuff that everybody does when they're 20, I couldn't do. Like going for hikes with your girlfriend or your fiance. Like there was no going for a hike.
Yeah.
And I would get mad at the world because I didn't understand it.
And I think, like, not just me, but other people take those things for granted too.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, because if people realize the amount of things they could do and they aren't doing, they would be astounded when they realize that they want to do them and they can't do them.
Do you think that, and I know you've kind of mentioned it earlier in different contexts, but do you think that in this regard, it was a blessing for you to get out of shape that badly, because it allowed you to like get an appreciation for things that other people don't appreciate?
I mean, yes. So that's one thing that I'm really trying to do now, is love myself through the process.
Like you couldn't walk up this hill next to us when you're 526 pounds.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would ever look at this hill to our right and say, "I'm thankful I can walk up this."
Yeah.
It's just something that doesn't ever cross your mind.
Exactly. And until you get to the point where you physically did it to yourself and prevented yourself from being able to do basic life function, you don't understand it.
So just to clarify, your harsh truth that you chose to ignore wasn't the fact that you were out of shape, because that was impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
It was the fact that you were the one to blame for it.
I'm the cause, 100%. It's my fault. And because I used to blame everybody. I used to blame my parents. I used, for the food choices when I was a kid. I would blame my, genetics.
I was going to say genetics, because again, in the bodybuilding world, you hear that all the time. Well, I'm not this way because, I don't have the genetics, or I don't look like him because I don't take as many drugs as he does, or I don't look like him because my body doesn't work well. Just all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I would blame everything. I even got to the point in life at one point where I made up like crazy stuff. Like I would blame fictional things that didn't even happen. You know what I mean? Like
it's crazy.
And now it's like I completely ignored the fact that I knew all along that it was my fault, but I just ignored it. I'm like,
yeah,
if it's easier to blame somebody else, because it's the hardest thing to do is to be able to talk about your worst moment and that worst moment be your fault.
Dude, I think, first of all, that's awesome that you were able to think of that as your harsh reality, or harsh truth that you ignored. That's awesome that you could do it on the fly like that. But like, I feel like that's probably going to hit home with a lot of people.
And that was my plan.
I think there's a lot of people, and even myself, like, I don't necessarily think I'm in a bad position in any aspect of my life. Like, whether it's professionally or financially or socially or whatever, like, I feel like I'm in an okay spot just because I'm continuing to progress in all those, and I feel like the arrow's trending in the right direction. But if I could do life all over again, like if you could start life at, let's take our life and cut it in half, let's say 15 years old. You could start at 15 years old again.
With the knowledge today?
Yeah. Would you be in the same spot you're in now? I would say you'd be far, far beyond. Like, I felt like, at least for me personally, if you told me what I know now at 15, it would be a travesty if I wasn't a millionaire by now.
I think I would be, I would be very wealthy, and B, I would not be as out of shape as I still am.
Yeah.
But I would, if you gave me like, the pick the red pill or the blue pill, $1 million or go back to your 15 years old, I wouldn't take either one. Because I like the work. I like the work to get to the $1 million. Right? I'm just saying $1 million as a figurative number.
Is it a gratification thing?
Yeah, I like to earn it. That's why like I enjoy working hard all day and all evening and all morning until I'm worn out. So I have to go to sleep. I like it. But to go back to 15 but still have the information and knowledge from today and change my life with a cheat codes, basically, so to speak, I still don't think you could possibly be able to help. I wouldn't be able to help as many people as I can right now because they don't know. They don't, people that are in this position that I was in, 2 years ago, don't believe guys that look like you. unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not always, right? They do if they can get past themselves to listen.
Well, it's easy for me to give advice on training and nutrition and stuff because someone who was in your spot would be like, oh, well, he's probably always looked like that. I bet he had abs when he was 12 years old. His parents are in good shape. So
right,
it's easy. He does. It's all unrelatable.
Yeah.
Like you can't relate to me, so I'm not going to take advice. It would be like it's like taking, advice from. Okay, so the one thing that makes me think of is like during the pandemic when we were all quarantined and we had those advertisements from celebrities saying we're in this together, we can all stay at home. Meanwhile, they're at home in these, $15 million mansions with indoor basketball courts and indoor movie theaters and pools and stuff.
Surrounded by their friends and family.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's very easy for you to think, like, what about these families that are living in a double-wide trailer and they got 2 families crammed in there with 8 total kids, some of which are sleeping on the floor, some of which, are crammed in a bed, some are sleeping in the freaking cupboards.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's easy for you to say that because it's we can't relate to you, so we don't want your advice. And I could very easily see how someone in your position wouldn't, and that's something that you can offer to people is like, and I think that we both try to be like that in a sense is like being 2 people who are your everyman.
Yeah.
Like we're just like, we say it all the time, like, a big dude trying to get smaller and a small dude trying to get bigger.
Yep.
Like that's all it is. And I feel like we're a lot more relatable than people might tend to believe if they look at us or if they, versus if they were actually to sit down and have conversations with us. Or
I would hope so.
Yeah.
So like that's my whole like thought process behind that is I wouldn't change it at all.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy helping people lose weight. And I don't even know how many people I've actually helped. And I don't really want to know. But I hope that I'll tell my story and the dark stuff and the stuff that have messed with my head my entire adult life forever if it helps one person.
Well, and like if you start at 15 and build yourself up into this ultra successful person in all aspects of life, you're going from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
So you can help people who are starting at 0 and help get them to 60. So I still think you can help people. But I don't know if you'd be able to help people that are starting at negative 60.
Right.
To get up to 0 and then get up to the 60.
And those are the ones those are my target audience because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. I'm still there, really. I mean, I've lost a lot of weight, but I'm still, in a crowded space. I don't stand out as somebody who, unless you know me and you talk to me or you listen to this podcast, you don't know that I work out 4 to 6 days a week and I eat calculated meals. You know what I mean? Like because I was so big that at my smallest I don't look that small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like so. Like, I'm still living that life. Like, I got made fun of for my weight yesterday. And that's okay. That's fine. Like, he obviously needed a release.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can be your guy. Here, put it on my shoulders. It's fine.
Yeah.
Because I know where I was. He don't.
And I think that's kind of, not to change tangents.
Yeah, sorry.
Or change paths here, but I think that's important to realize that, like, you look at someone at surface value and you don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So, like, you have that in the opposite, too, where people are trying to gain muscle. And, a guy will wear a tank top to the gym and be flexing his arms in the mirror. And people say, oh, look at him. He's not even that big. It's like, yeah, but, he might have been
working for that.
Coming out of, maybe he was battling some type of eating disorder or something. For him, he may have made more progress in the gym than you ever have.
Right.
But his starting point was just drastically different. Yeah, so small or so big or whatever.
Right.
But I thought, like I said, man, when Donovan posed that question to us, I thought that was really cool because I was like, holy cow. Like,
how old is he?
He is 19, I believe.
So
19, 20 range, yeah.
The mental capacity for that 20-year-old young man, unbelievable.
Yeah, like a harsh truth that you choose to ignore.
I mean, at 20 years old, I had never even thought to ask a question like that of somebody.
No, and I thought that it was nice how we both had like drastically different answers.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that both of our answers eventually got worked back to the point where we were discussing helping people.
It's the goal in life.
Like you and I, not that we are trying to make ourselves out to be saints here, but I think that that's one of the reasons too, not only to help ourselves, but we want to help other people with the podcast. So I'm hoping that people listen to this and they find value in it and they have takeaways that they can say, I got something from the podcast today, even if it's just one thing. Like, I feel like the 45 minutes to an hour would be worth it if we were able to give one person one takeaway that could even cause like a sliver of impact in their life long term. Hopefully, that would be nice.
I think that's the reason for the name and the reason for like the stuff that we talk about. Like, don't ever stop chasing your someday dreams. That kind of thing. Like, because if you do, if you don't have something to want, what's it worth?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's a nice place to wrap it up, man.
Yeah.
We kind of went in a little bit of review mode, and then we talked about the question. I think that maybe we should pose that every week. Even if it's not something that, not like a full blown Q&A, but I think that putting out those question opportunities for people maybe even sparks good discussion.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a Q&A episode like we used to do where we would just read question, answer, read question, answer, read question, answer. And then maybe we kill two birds with one stone, because not only do we elicit a little bit of some quality dialogue, but then we also are making this more interactive, which was a goal for us, in the past. As we said, we want to make this significantly more impactful. And one of the ways that we can do that is be more interactive with the people that listen.
Yes.
So you can look forward to some more opportunities to ask questions, I guess, then.
Yeah. And I love these hard questions.
Yeah.
Like, keep the hard ones coming.
Yeah, the more difficult, the better.
It's engaging for my brain.
Yes.
So.
And we could all use a little bit of practice.
Yes.
So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 84. We really appreciate you guys submitting questions. We appreciate your strong mental fortitudes. Keep chasing your dreams and sticking with us, and we will see you next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the